Hello and welcome to the Run Testers. My name's Nick and this is our first look at the Saucony Endorphin Pro 4. So we were big fans of the Saucony Endorphin Pro 3 and been very much looking forward to testing out this new shoe. I think we're a little bit behind the eight ball. Some other people have had it before us, but a few of us have got it now. So we're going to give you our first run take here and then a full multi-test review down the line. First thing to look at is the price, which has gone up in the UK. It's £230 now in the UK, which is a £20 price rise on the Endorphin Pro 3, but it's the same $225 in the US as the previous model. Got a little bit of a weight gain as well. It's 233 grams or 8.2 ounces in my UK size 9. It's about a 15 gram rise in weight compared to the Endorphin Pro 3. You've got the same stack and drop though. It's an 8mm drop, the stack height of 39.5mm at the heel, 31.5 at the forefoot. So the biggest update to the new shoe comes in the midsole, which is now a dual density setup. You have a top layer of Saucony's Power Run HG foam, which is the foam was introduced with the Saucony Endorphin Elite carbon racing shoe last year. And the bottom layer is Saucony's Power Run PB foam, the same stuff that's been on the Endorphin Pro and Speed for the first 3 generations. Obviously still got a full length carbon plate running through the shoe and Saucony's Speed Roll rocker geometry as well. Another little change to the cushioning is the new SRS sock liner, which is a super responsive sock liner that stands for apparently. So that just gives you a little bit more bounce on the top of the midsole there. You have a redesigned mesh upper, which is very breathable. It has a built-in stretchy knit tongue with a very nice little tab here that you can use to fold over the top of your laces. A little bit of padding around the heel, but not too much going on there, and some extra structure there with an internal heel counter at the back of the upper there. Also got a slightly redesigned outsole here, which now has a lattice pattern. You've got pretty similar coverage to the previous models of the shoe with good forefoot coverage and a couple of little strips at the back just to protect the key impact zones with plenty of exposed foam and a big cutout in the middle there to bring the weight down.
So the fit for the Endorphin Pro 4 for me I found it better than the 3. So I ran the London Marathon 2022 in the 3 and I'd always in my training found it like maybe came up a bit short for me. I'm a UK size 6. I've got a 6 again. I had a 6 last time. I do think I'd ideally like a little bit more beyond my toe, but I do feel it's closer to what I want than last year. I ran in the Speed this week and actually do feel like there's more room beyond my big toe in the Speed than there is in the Pro. Generally, good fit. I found these integrated tongs, sometimes when, like me, I have slightly narrow feet, they can lead to some like bunching up because there isn't that overlap of the fabric, but it was fine. I cinched it in nice and tight, got a good fit, no heel slippage at all on my run. Generally the fit was good, comfortable from the off all round. The upper is a little bit more, it's still quite lightweight in the upper, but very there's a little bit more to it than the 3, a little bit more substance to it, and for me that's a good thing. I don't mind an extra few grams in the upper if that's going to make it a bit more more comfortable, particularly for those longer runs.
I think overall I would describe this fit as roomy, particularly in the toe box. There is plenty of wiggle room. There's plenty of distance between your end of your toes and the end of that toe box. There's quite a lot of room and volume across the top as well. You know, you could actually really sort of wiggle your toes, which is great. It's not too tight on the sort of hugging race fit. They do hold well across the midfoot. I did find there was a little bit of movement of my heels, almost sort of sliding in the heel cup a little bit. So that did feel a little bit loose at times, but in terms of kind of movement up and down in the heel, those heels held well. And yeah, you do have to sort of pay attention to how you're lacing them down. It's not as snug and as hugging as some carbon race shoes in terms of the fit, but I would recommend going through to size.
So in terms of fit, I've had the Endorphin Pro 4 in a UK size 8. That's exactly the same size that I had the Endorphin Pro 3 in, a shoe that I have run a fair amount in. I've raced at marathon. I've done a lot of my marathon training runs and long training runs in that shoe as well. And I didn't really have any issues with the fit and the feeling of the upper on the Pro 3. The only thing I would say is that it had turned a couple of my white running socks permanently pink at the toes. But ultimately, aside from that, it'd been absolutely fine. Now with the Pro 4, I would say the upper kind of reminds me, it's kind of reminiscent of those kind of Endorphin Speed style uppers. I don't think that's the only similarities with the speed range, which I'll kind of get into in the run test. But there's a little bit more volume, I would say. There's a little bit more sag to that upper. You just have to feel it compared to the Pro 3. So some people might like the fact that it feels naturally like there's a bit more space, a more accommodating kind of fit compared to the Pro 3. Now, in terms of space up front of the toes, it still is a little bit snug. I think it probably is a little bit less snug than the Pro 3, but ultimately, you know, I haven't found it an issue. I've done a long run in it already, and that kind of level of space in the toe box hasn't been an issue for you. There may be an argument to go half a size up in this, but I think for me, it's been absolutely fine. In terms of midfoot, kind of lockdown hole, it's been absolutely fine. It's the same level of padding in the heel compared to the Pro 3. The kind of tongue and laces lockdown wise has been absolutely fine. I've had no issues there. I have to mention this kind of drop down tongue, which kind of reminds me of the drop down tongues I have on my football boots. It doesn't really add anything, I would say, in terms of the kind of lockdown and feel that you get here, but it's kind of a nice little design addition here that Saucony's put an Endorphin Pro for. So I would say I'm feeling like going true to size in this will be fine for me. There may be an argument if you wanted something a little less snug in the toes, maybe going half a size up in this shoe. But yeah, no major issues to kind of report in terms of my fit with the Pro 4 so far.
Fit was very good for me with the Saucony Endorphin Pro 4 on my first run. It's got a really nice feel actually. You pull it on and it feels very comfortable, but holds the foot securely for fast paces, but does have a relaxed, airy, breathable feel to it. So yeah, really like the upper, and I do think the fit's very good in my normal running shoe size. You've got this stretchy tongue, which sometimes doesn't always work with shoes, but it does work very well on this shoe. So yeah, nothing but praise for the fit and upper of the shoe for me. So about to head off and do my first run in the Saucony Endorphin Pro 4, which is obviously very exciting. A shoe we love very much was the Endorphin Pro 3, so it'll be interesting to see what the 4 feels like. My excitement is tempered a little bit by fear because of the workout I have planned, which is one of the hardest I think I've been set, mainly because of the judgment involved. So I've got to do 20 times 60 seconds on and then 60 seconds float, so 40 minutes total. 60 seconds on is 5k intensity and the float is half marathon intensity, so that all sounds very fast to me. It sounds like a fast 40 minutes, so I've got to try and make sure I don't blow up too much and judge that correctly, because after that I'm gonna have a 3-minute break and then do 4 miles at 5:35 miling. It's a pretty tough session. It'll be a good test of the shoes. I'm looking forward to seeing how they feel, how the new dual density midsole feels compared to the Endorphin Pro 3, but yeah, looking forward to getting out there. Kind of looking forward to getting out there and starting that. So all done now. That was tough. Very, very tricky workout there. Really hard to judge that first 40 minutes, and and then the second 4-mile tempo kind of marathon pace block was really tough. But ended up solid overall. Half marathon. Actually, it was basically almost exactly a half marathon. Pretty solid outing for the shoes. First block I was running probably in that first 60 seconds. I averaged probably around 320k pace, something like that, and then more like 330, 330, 335 in the second half. Slowed a bit towards the end, but actually quite pleased with how that went. Like, it's not actually 5k or half marathon pace obviously, but the intensity certainly felt intense to me. Like, I was running at the right kind of race intensities. It was like a learning workout for me to try and do that kind of thing, and the pace was okay. And then in the marathon block, like first mile I thought I was going to get nowhere near. I did kind of first mile near the pace, started to really drop off second mile, and I thought this is going to go really sideways, but then came back, pulled in strong last 2 miles. Last mile was on pace, so I did 5:40 per mile instead of 5:35 per mile, which was the goal there. But yeah, pretty pleased with that. Shoe felt really good for out. So it's a lot more comfortable than the Saucony Endorphin Elite. I suppose that was one of my fears with this 8G foam. Like, I've done a half marathon race in the Endorphin Elite and some long sessions, and it really beats up my forefoot, the aggressive rocker, the way it kind of snaps through. Didn't get that at all today. Really comfortable shoe, really comfortable warm-ups, cool-downs as well, which was a big thing about the Endorphin Pro 3. It was just a very versatile shoe for a carbon shoe, really comfortable to use for lots of different things. And this is that, and then you've got a bit more pace, and you've got a slightly firmer feeling under the forefoot. Really noticeable. I think that's maybe where there's more power on HG, I don't know, but you've got that comfortable but not squishy back of the shoe, and then it pushes you through that speedrun rocker onto that firmer forefoot, which has a little bit more bounce. And that's really how I like the setup of the shoes. It's not like the Alpha 3, but a similar setup to that, where it has that the firmer air zoom pods under the forefoot to give you that bit more ping off there. And yeah, it felt very light, very easy to pick up the whole way. It felt lighter than it is actually, because it is a bit heavier than the Endorphin Pro 3, but it doesn't feel it because of that firmness. It almost feels a bit more nimble almost, and then has that comfort. So really enjoyed that first outing in the shoe. Like, I was struggling there, and the whole way it felt like it was giving me a good platform to push against.
giving me some of that support, saving the legs, feeling comfortable. And the way I kind of rebounded during that 4 miles, almost having a bit, using that first 2 miles almost to recover still from the first half of the workout, I think that's really a good sign for the shoe. That's a really nice feeling there. I started to go off the rails, but was able to push again, and the shoe had the acceleration of being able to start turning over quicker again, and the comfort and the bounce deep into that workout to not at all bottom out, to give you that platform to keep running fast against towards the end. So it's lots to like about the shoe in the first run there, and a pretty solid and long first outing. So for this initial first run test, I've just done 7 miles. That included, I was supposed to do a 12 by 3 minutes at 5 minute 49 pace with 1 minute recoveries in between. I didn't manage to do that. I've had a bit of a cold this week, so I killed that early. I did half a dozen of those. So a good sort of fast interval session, pushing my very sort of top paces, I guess, and some recoveries. And then either side of that, tacked on some very slow ploddy miles. So I've given these a good test, and I was on feet for about an hour, so about an hour's run out. Overall, my sensation with these is, this is initial feedback. It's the first time I've run in them, so I'm going to reserve judgment fully, but this is what I'm thinking right now. They weren't as punchy as many other carbon racers. They're quite soft. There's quite a comfortable kind of broad platform to run off. They're the kind of shoes that I think you're going to be happy with if you're running ragged towards the end of a marathon. There's plenty of forgiveness there in that midsole, but I don't think it's as punchy. It's not as aggressive as some shoes. It's a bit more accommodating, maybe a bit more accessible, maybe a bit more, I don't know, a bit more kind of long run friendly if you're not feeling absolutely 100% when you're racing. And for that, I actually found it probably did better when I was sort of cruising along at kind of 8 minute mile pace, rather than when I was trying to push all out to get those kind of intervals. As I said, I had a cold this week, so I wasn't really feeling my best. I was hoping the shoes might give me a bit more. I don't found that they really sort of helped me that much, or when I needed it. Again, this is a massive caveat, because sometimes when you come back and run in these shoes and you're feeling leggy and you're not feeling great, you can kind of say, well, it's the shoes problem, when it's not. It's just how your body is. But my initial feelings of this in the first run is that they're not as kind of snappy. I don't think they're even as lively maybe as the Hyperion Elite 4 that we ran in last week in Barcelona. I put them in the kind of mild super shoe sort of bracket. And having just run earlier this week in the Speed 4, the Saucony Endorphin Speed 4, the big question I have, and I'm going to put these side by side at some point, is actually how much better and how much punchier are they than the Speed 4? On instinct right now, having run in that, I don't think there's much to choose between these shoes. I actually had to sort of have a stop and have a look and just make sure I put the right shoes on, because they look very much alike. So yeah, for me, that's it. I didn't find the ride that much more punchy, that much more propulsive. Interrupted by a bee. Yeah, and overall, I just think this might be one that fits into a bracket of like an accommodating super shoe that is more accessible for a wider sort of range of runners, rather than this kind of all-out, fast, punchy, racy alpha fly kind of vibe. So yeah, that's been my first run testing it. Going to be really interesting to see if that changes over time. I'm looking forward to doing a lot more miles in a lot of different paces, and also to put them side by side by some of the other carbon shoes. But initially, I enjoyed running in the shoes. I just didn't find them particularly lively in comparison to some of the other carbon racers out there.
Okay, so into that run test now. I've done a couple of runs in Endorphin Pro 4 now. My first run was a 5 mile treadmill run, and that was kind of at my 10k pace, so kind of 6:30, 6:40 minute mile pace. I did a treadmill run first, and that's really my way of trying to get a sense of, am I going to be okay in terms of fit, in terms of all those kind of things before I go out on the road and do some longer time in it. Now, what I would say the thing that really stood out for me on that first run was it felt nice to run at that pace, ultimately, first and foremost. I think what really shines for me, and I think in the endorphin range in general, is that kind of speed roll geometry, which really quickly gets you onto your toes and makes you feel like you want to run fast in this shoe. And it's assistance, but it's, you still got to put the work in to get that really good feeling out of it. From that point of view, it felt very good. Now, obviously, the midsole, there's a big change there. You've got that Power Run PB, which you had in Endorphin Pro 3, but you're also getting that Power Run HG, which in the Endorphin Elite, I found a little on its own. I found a little on the aggressive side in terms of its application in that shoe. I do feel like maybe that was a little bit of a contributor to me getting injured. The aggressive side of it just was a little too much for me. It was clearly a good shoe, but I think in the Endorphin Pro 3, I think there's a good mix here. I think you're still getting that kind of nice bounce here from the Power Run PB. I think also, and I don't really talk about the sock liner, that you can really feel like you're sinking, you're getting some bounce from that sock line as well too, which I think really helps, where you are getting a firmer edge from the Power Run HG. I think particularly in the kind of front of this shoe, where you're dropping down that softer, kind of bouncier power on PB, and you're getting something a little bit more firmer, not overly firm, but firm in there to give you that kind of nice responsive feel as well too. I think maybe I'm not 100% convinced, and obviously you're only a couple of runs in, but I feel maybe it's lost a little bit of that kind of rocker feel, and I don't know if that comes from a kind of more denser, kind of more volume in this shoe that I'm feeling. I'm not 100% sure, but that's kind of what I'm feeling now. I did that longer run. That was a kind of 18-mile marathon training run, and it was kind of a 8-minute mile kind of average pace. I dropped down to kind of 7:30, 7:40 minute mile pace, which is closer to what I'm aiming to be kind of when I do London Marathon. What I found in this shoe, you really can coast in it, and I think that's a really important thing, and that's the thing that really stood out for me in that long run. When I was running at that slightly kind of quicker pace, more marathon level kind of pace for me, I felt like I was coasting in this shoe. It's nice and stable, so that speed roll geometry works really nicely, and I felt like you're still getting that power run BB kind of bounce that, to make sure that ride is enjoyable, but then you're getting that firmer edge, particularly I think up front in this shoe. Now, as I said, I don't know, I feel like maybe has lost a little bit of the enjoyment for me that I got from the Endorphin Pro 3. I didn't think there was massive amounts wrong with the ride and experience of the Pro 3, but this feels like maybe it is going to be a bit more supportive in terms of like easing off in your pace in a marathon, where I think, from that point of view, it's going to make it more accessible. I did say that in the upper side of things, it feels a little bit more like the Endorphin Speed to me. I do think there's hallmarks of it in the ride and experience of running in this shoe, where I think you can do a lot of training in this shoe. You can also race in it, and you get that feeling you want when you're running at those faster paces. But I think when you ease off, there isn't a shoe here that's going to fight against you to do that. It is still going to want to push you forward, but it isn't going to feel too overly aggressive on that side. So outside wise, I've done kind of over 20 miles in this shoe now. Though the design is pretty similar to the Endorphin Pro 3, which I think the outside was very good on the Pro 3, and I think it gave it that ability to run, racing as well, longer distance, but also do a lot of your daily training kind of stuff, or quicker stuff in that shoe as well too. Now, I'm not seeing any kind of wear whatsoever yet after those kind of 20 or so miles in this shoe. The design is very similar. I think the level of rubber is very similar in terms of what you got on the Endorphin Pro 3. And I said, I think you may be getting a little bit less in terms of that design, but I think, in terms of the areas that it's protecting or giving that durability and that grip, it's similar. I've been kind of in dry conditions, on a treadmill, on road and pavements, and it's been absolutely fine from a traction and gripping point of view. Haven't had any issues in terms of cornering in this shoe either. So from an outside point of view, I would say not massive amount to report so far. It feels very similar to the Pro 3, which I feel like they didn't have to change much on the outside front on that shoe, to be honest. I've had 2 good runs. I say I'm a massive fan of the Endorphin Pro 3. I didn't think there was a massive amount wrong with it, and it's a shoe I've continued to use and I would happily race in. I think the Pro 4 makes some changes. I think makes it still a good shoe, but a different shoe for me, and I do still think it's a shoe you can run quick in, you can cruise in as well too. And I say in that long run, when I was running kind of a little bit slower in places, but also at my kind of marathon or intended marathon pace, it felt good to do that, and I was kind of eating up that quicker time without really realizing it. I think that's a good hallmark and a good sign of a good kind of marathon long distance shoe. So 2 good runs. I would say very different from the Pro 3. I'll get more into that in my initial verdict, but definitely a good run, and I can see the Endorphin Pro 4 still appealing to people, maybe slightly different people, but I'll get more into that in the initial verdict.
So this week I've run in both the Speed and the Pro. They are strikingly similar, aren't they, in the look there, and there's a lot of key details that are quite similar in the design. I don't know how runners are going to feel about this. Are you going to be annoyed that you're getting mistaken one for the other? But on the feet, they do feel quite different. So like with the Speed, there's this the heel, there's a lot more width in that heel than we had in the Pro 3. Didn't find it quite as noticeable running out in the Pro as I did in the Speed this week. From the off, I found it a really nice smooth ride. Maybe slightly less bouncy than the 3, but I really enjoyed my warm-up mile. I did 6 miles with 4 times 1 mile at what was supposed to be half marathon pace, but ended up being a bit faster. And that first mile, as I was warming up, really was really nice and dreamy. It felt nice and fluid and smooth. That speed roll, my legs were like turning over, really nice. And I just found that a real joy to run in this shoe. As I picked up the pace, it was still good, but I do feel like I enjoyed it more at that cruisy, kind of closer to marathon pace than I did when I was pushing the pace. Obviously, some of that might have been because I was finding it hard work. Yeah, I do think for me it would be a nice race shoe over longer distances. However, I in the 3 did have issues with when I did running it for a long run, it being quite aggressive, and for me personally a bit uncomfortable for those end of the races. Now let's think that I'm somebody that's going to be running a marathon. I'm going to be out there an hour longer than someone like Nick, so I will always go towards comfort rather than absolute speed. And I think there may have been a move in this shoe that switches it more towards what I want from a shoe. So maybe it felt a little bit less aggressive. Obviously I was only going up to 6 miles today, but it did feel a bit less aggressive and therefore a bit more comfortable for what I like in a shoe.
Okay, so some initial thoughts on the Saucony Endorphin Pro 4 after a couple of runs in this shoe. Now what I would say is it's a good shoe. It's definitely a different shoe from the Endorphin Pro 3. I think there's a few ways to look at it. I think from a price point of view, it's cheaper than things like the Alpha Fly. It's cheaper like things like the Hoka Cielo X1, which I think are very different shoes, more aggressive, kind of, you know, feeling in terms of that ride, in terms of experience, in terms of the upper that you're getting on those shoes as well too. This is more kind of sitting at the price range of things like the New Balance SC Elite V4, which I think I've had a nicer experience in this shoe so far in terms of my longer runs, in terms of that shorter, sharper stuff. I do think this is a shoe that is designed for marathons and long distances, and I do think it is one that you can cruise and coast in and feel comfortable to do those kind of longer runs. If you want to run a bit quicker, absolutely, I mean, that's what it's designed for. It's designed to run fast, but I think it feels maybe it's going to be a bit more accommodating to a lot more people than the Endorphin Pro 3, which, to be honest, I still suggest to people and still think it's a really accessible marathon shoe and racing shoe. As I said, I just feel like this feels like a different Endorphin Pro shoe, and it feels closer to me than the experience I've had with Endorphin Speed range, which I think for a lot of people that's going to be a good thing. I just think, I've still got a lot of love for the Endorphin Pro 3. I still think it's a fantastic shoe. I didn't have problems with the upper, the fit, the ride. Those things were not issues for me, and I just think with the Endorphin Pro 4 so far, I'm feeling like it's a different shoe. You might like, if you like the Endorphin Pro 3 but wanted something with maybe more accommodating upper, maybe something that has a slightly more firmer edge to it in terms of the ride. You're getting that bounce still from the Power Run PB, but I think maybe, is it as lively? I'm on the fence with that at the moment after those couple of runs, but I do think it is a good shoe. And it's one that it's felt comfortable to run in. It's kind of quicker time, that kind of longer time on my feet as well. It's just whether, is it a better shoe than the Pro 3? I just think it's a different shoe. I'm a bit indecisive about this one at the moment. I have really liked it in those couple of runs, but I'm thinking about my time in Endorphin Pro 3, and is it better? I think it's just, as I said, I feel like it's different at the moment for me, but I think there's going to be a lot of people that this shoe is going to appeal to, particularly when you see it's a marathon shoe, a super shoe, at a more affordable price than some of the other super shoes. It's still massively expensive, but you may be going to get something that you can race in, still do daily training miles in, have an outsole that's going to give you that level of durability to do that as well too, for a little bit less money than those really top tier super shoes.
So initial verdict from me is that I'm quite excited to go out some more in this shoe. Given that I thought that this might not be a shoe that was suited to me based on how I got on with the Pro 3, I feel like maybe Saucony have made this a little bit more accessible as a shoe in the 4 version, to accommodate people like me that maybe are after a little bit less aggression from their racing shoe to suit over that longer distance. So the 3, it was fast. It was very fast as a shoe. I think this one, to my first test, feels a little bit less fast, but a little bit more accessible and a little bit more comfortable. So that, from a selfish point of view, brilliant.
Early verdict, this looks like a nice little update for the Endorphin Pro line. I used the Endorphin Pro 3 a lot, and I found that over time, as much as I liked it, I think it softened up slightly a little bit, and I lost a little bit of the response and speed from it over time. I wonder if the new HG foam you have in the midsole here will change that, make sure it stays a bit more resilient and give you that better fast feeling deep into runs and also over the lifespan of the shoe. But it does still retain a lot of the key characteristics of the Endorphin Pro 3. It's got a similar feel on the run, and it's got that accommodating feel too. That means it's a shoe that I think a lot of runners will find quite a natural ride for a carbon plate super shoe like this, while still being very fast, and it's one that you can use actually for a nice variety of runs as well, because it isn't so soft and wobbly and doesn't dictate the way you move so much as some of the other more aggressive carbon shoes out there. It's got a really nice feel to it that actually is still very fast and great for workouts and races, but I think will work for lots of people very well. That I think differs a little bit to the Endorphin Elite, which I thought was a really fast shoe, but the one that didn't really work with my gait. I found it a bit harsh, a bit uncomfortable under the forefoot for when using for faster long runs and long efforts. And this is a much more welcoming shoe, and one that I think will probably work a little bit better for me. Obviously, loads of competition in this area. We'll get to some head-to-head verdicts and stuff like that in the full review. But for now, my early impressions are that Saucony has made a nice little update to the Endorphin Pro line here with this shoe, and mostly kept the price the same, which I think is a plus. Obviously, it's gone up in the UK a little bit, but that's happening to us in the UK with every brand. We're getting really hit hard on that. But in the US, you've got that relatively low price tag for a carbon shoe at this point, and that's probably because Saucony wants to keep the range a bit separate with the Endorphin Elite at that really high price point. So yeah, enjoyed first run in the Endorphin Pro 4.
So for my initial verdict, a big caveat here, it's after one run, an hour and about 7 miles. So I don't really feel like I want to give a sort of full verdict. This isn't the full review, so don't make a decision on whether or not you're going to buy them based on this. But it's so far, after those miles, it's definitely a like, not love for me in terms of these shoes. Really enjoyed the way they feel on the foot. Nice, they're light, they do feel comfortable. They do help with the clip along. But I would sort of question whether or not I put them up there in terms of those kind of super shoes. They just didn't really feel like they were giving me that energy compared to some other shoes that feel either like a Hoka Rocket X2, which just feels a bit more direct, a bit more racy, a bit more punchy, a bit more of the old school Vaporfly vibe, where you've got to be up on your toes and you've got to be, it's encouraging you to move fast and clip. This feels like it's quite a big platform of sort of a lot of cushion. And some shoes, when they get that big sort of platform of cushion, then you get the big bounce and the kick from the cushioning. I wasn't really getting that either here. What I got was like a nice cushioned, energetic, comfortable run, but one that didn't really fill me with kind of that joy and that bounciness that you might get from like a Strung X2 or an Alpha Fly 3 or those kind of shoes, or an Alpha Fly 2, sorry I should say, because I haven't run in the 3. And so at the moment I feel the shoe might be falling between two camps. I do think a lot of people are going to enjoy running in it though, but is it in a super shoe bracket? Maybe not. Maybe as a sort of long distance faster trainer, perhaps that's where I would put it. But that's after the first run. I'm going to give it some more, and we'll come back with a verdict in the review.
That's our first look at the Endorphin Pro 4. Let us know what you think of the shoe if you've been testing it yourself. We will get to our full review in due time when all of us have had a chance to test it. It's going to be a big multi-tester, so it might take a couple of weeks. But yeah, we'll get that up as soon as we can. Like, subscribe, ring the little bell, and you'll get notified when we do launch that video.